Hi, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, Short Form Content for Social Media, brought to you by The Space. I'm Linda Coburn, I'm the moderator today, and I'm just going to run you through quickly what's going to happen. So, as I said, the webinar is brought to you by The Space, and we're a digital commissioning agency for the arts and cultural sector, working with arts organisations and artists. And as you can see, over the years, we have worked with a massive range of organisations in all kinds of contexts and created more than 300 digital commissions. And this part of our work, the skills development for the sector, really comes from sort of case studies and the work that we've done in that area, and sort of synthesising some of the outcomes and the understanding and sharing it, which is what we're doing today. The timetable for today is quite simple. We will start with a conversation with Rob and Amrit, and I'll get them to introduce themselves, talking about the kinds of work that they're doing at the moment, what trends they're seeing and so on. And then Amrit will go into a quite specific presentation about some kind of tips and themes and ideas that will really focus your mind on content creation. And then we've got a whole session where there's time for your questions, some of which were sent in advance, and the ones that come up through the talks. So we really encourage you to use the chat while we're going along, and we'll be in that chat checking on the conversations, adding things in, encouraging you to speak to one another using that, and also we'll use it for questions back to the audience. And then there's another couple of practical things to say, which is, one, we do have a live captioner with us today. So if the live captions would be helpful to you, you need to go to the bottom of the screen, click on live transcript and choose your option. And secondly, the webinar will be recorded and so will be available on our YouTube channel for a period of time after the event. So if you want to revisit it or tell anybody else about it or look back at Amrit's presentation, that will all be on YouTube. Okay, so that's my practical introduction to the session, and I'm going to now ask Rob and Amrit to join me, and we'll kick off by really thinking about, what's going on for them at the moment. So if they're ready to appear. Hello. Hiya. So I'm going to start by asking you to each to do a very quick introduction to yourself and the work that you do in this context that would be relevant to our audience. So I'll start with Rob. Will you just, who are you? What do you do?
Of course, thanks, Linda. Hi, everybody. My name's Rob. I'm head of programs for The Space, where I work across a couple of different slates of activity. The low-cost R&D strand that we've got, producing small digital next steps projects with teams and organisations, and then crucially, making sure those connect with the audiences that they deserve. And also our mentoring program as well, where it's advice and guidance separated from a specific project. And that can be on any aspect of digital. So it may well be that it is about short form content strategy. It may be about audience development. It may be about sustainability, any number of things. So yeah, that's who I am.
Brilliant. And Amrit, would you like to do the same? Introduce yourself.
Sure, yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Amrit Singh. So I'm an artist, content creator, and mentor from Birmingham. So my background is actually in graphic design and advertising, working around 15 years on creative campaigns and digital initiatives. I'm also the creative director at Rebel Creatives, which is a content creation agency and training provider specializing in short form content, immersive tech, and social media, as well as training and digital bootcamps and mentoring with the lovely Space. I'm also the founder of Wild Lotus Art, which is an art brand with a global customer base. And my art's been featured in over 25 exhibitions and 15 public art sculptures around the UK. That's me.
Thank you. Brilliant. So you're sort of bringing to us today, what we're really kind of focused on in this first session is both of you, your roles in sort of mentoring and advising and working with other organisations, and then we'll get much more into the kind of practical stuff in the next section. But so for both of you, and I'll start with you, Amrit, as you're already kind of talking, but sort of over the last sort of year or so, what have been the typical challenges that have come to you when you've been mentoring arts organisations, artists and other people in sort of building short form content?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, as we all know, the last year has been very tricky for a lot of us, um, which has caused panic from a lot of organizations of what to share, how to create content, and how to seem like they're relevant still in a world where everyone's looking online and viewing online. So, some of the biggest questions I've been getting in mentoring, and I've mentored quite a few organizations last year and already this year, is in sustainable content, how to create sustainable content and making the use most of what we already have. I think a lot of organizations, when they panic, they think about creating new content or what to create, and in that panic, they just share a lot of content for the sake of sharing a lot of content without actually realizing what's relevant, what actually helps elevate our brand, our business forward. So those are kind of things, from brand strategy to social media strategies to marketing strategies. It's kind of, as the world slowed down a little bit, it gave everyone up an opportunity, a really good opportunity, to start to walk instead of run and focus on the brand, the top. What is our brand strategy? What is our tone of voice? Have we got a social media strategy, a content creation strategy? Does it tie in? Do we have a guidelines that help the rest of the organization who work in different areas around the UK and make it easy to create content and also communicate with one another? So that's kind of the biggest asks I've had.
Yeah, thank you. Rob, how does your experience echo that or contrast with it?
No, it completely echoes it. I mean, I think it has been such a unique time. It has been such a challenging time. I think people have really scrutinized the value that they're getting back from the work that they're putting in. I think people have been experimenting with different types of short form, with different types of content creation. I think a lot of people are starting to say, where is this working? What are we getting back from this? How much is this? If social media wasn't a thing, what social media would we try and invent? Do you know what I mean? What are the problems that we can genuinely solve with this? What are the things that we can genuinely get out of this, rather than seeing it as, well, this is something that we do because we're expected to have a YouTube channel, we're expected to be on TikTok, we're expected to have a podcast, we're expected, all of those sorts of things. I think sustainability would absolutely say has been a huge issue for a lot of people as well. I think people are very quick to ask how they can future-proof technology. I don't know if they're as quick to say, how can we future-proof our time and our energy? I think sometimes people think about exploring these different areas and saying, we could have a podcast, for example, and don't consider actually what are we going to do if this turns out to be not a failure, but conversely hugely successful. If we suddenly try and experiment in these different areas and then find ourselves in 6 months' time with a huge audience turning up for our next podcast and a huge audience turning up for our next piece of video, a huge audience turning up for whatever it may be, have we got is that sustainable for us as an organization? So yeah, I think very much so.
So you've been talking about is kind of sustainability. Amrit mentioned strategy, tone of voice, brand, all of that, and thinking about working remotely and how you kind of keep your teams involved and using time and energy wisely. And also we talked about the value, people questioning what are they getting back from doing this? Is there anything else that you've noticed people kind of, I'm really sort of trying to pull out the theme from all of your different mentoring. Is there anything else in there that you haven't covered yet that you'd want to add in as the things that people are thinking about this in this sort of last year or so? That's to either of
Sure.
you.
Yeah, no problem. So I actually went through a lot of my notes the other day and pulled out a lot of the subjects that were asked. And so I'm going to read a bunch of them. I think a lot of them will be relevant to the audience that we have here. So Rob kind of mentioned platforms. So exploring emerging platforms. One of the biggest things that we've noticed over the last 2 years or lockdown time is a lot of new platforms, not a new technology has emerged. And is very difficult sometimes to put keep the finger on the pulse, and because technology moves so fast. So exploring emerging platforms, finding new tools and apps. So in terms of creating sustainable content, it's all about creating affordable content as well. So how do we create affordable content? What is the apps that we can use on our devices, in our pockets, and equipment to use? Top tips for mobile filmmaking. So as soon as most people have people working in the company all over the UK or dotted around, how can you make it mobile instead of having a desktop suite and expensive equipment? Producing professional equipment in-house has always been a big ask, and how to ensure longevity and evergreen content. So how can you repurpose content? That's kind of linking also to sustainability as well. I mentioned the strategy earlier. That's quite a big thing as well. And also opportunities to reach new audiences. This has been a big ask. So opportunity to diversify their content to reach younger audiences. Just the new audience level has been really interesting to see kind of what is the strategy, how does each platform change with the audiences, and how does the content also change with that as well. And a nice one which has been fun to talk to businesses with, which is building their creative confidence. How what you put out there also increases your confidence in how you talk about your own company as well. I think that's been really nice to talk about. So yeah, there's been quite a few.
And I'm smiling away thinking that you're asking lots of questions in this session, and then you've got a presentation coming up later which will give some answers or examples of where things have worked well. Yes. So that's brilliant. Rob, is there anything else you wanted to add in before I go on to the next question?
I would absolutely echo what Amrit said about confidence. I think that's still such a huge barrier for people, and it's wild because Amrit's absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Amrit. It's creative confidence. You know, you've got people that have done fantastic audience-facing things in theatres and exhibition centres and concert halls and all this sort of stuff. And I think as soon as video gets involved, people do get scared. And I think it's right to acknowledge that there are individual cultures on individual platforms. Even one video platform to another are not the same. It is important to understand who you're speaking to in those places. But I think the fact that confidence is such an issue to a lot of people, I think is phenomenally telling, just in terms of how big a space this is, about how much there is to consider. So yeah.
And so the other thing I wanted to touch on is really the process that you use when you're working with organisations, and you're talking about confidence. So presumably as a mentor, you're going in and what you're really trying to do is build that creative confidence. Can you say something about your process? So how you decide what recommendations, I'll start with Rob with this one, how you decide what recommendations or advice to offer.
I think there is an element of, and we've noticed this a lot over the past 12 months, people almost taking a step back before they step forward. So really assess what you've been doing, what's already taking up time, because you will be creating material or publishing things, even if they're simple tweets or Facebook updates or whatever it may be. I'm sure you're already doing something. Have a look at what metrics you've got, what data you've got, how successful is that? How can you say, yeah, whose attention have we already got? What's happening? What's working? I think at the same time, trying to say, are there areas where we can dial things down a little bit? You know, are there areas where we are super serving one existing audience rather than building that audience as well? So yeah, I would suggest that's always a really, really good starting point, to have a look at who you're already reaching and what's already using up your time before you start building more things on top of that. You know, it shouldn't feel like a chore. It should feel rewarding and like there is a benefit to it.
Yeah, lovely, thank you. And Amrit, what about how you go about making your decisions and helping people through some of this and building their confidence?
Yeah, sure. So I think Rob said something really, really good then, which was talking about what you already are good at, I think, and then building from that as well. I think that's something which we all need to do a lot more of. Instead of producing new stuff, is what are we brilliant at? But one of the things that I do whenever I speak to any business is I ask for their social media details and presence beforehand, and I do a little bit of an audit. Most mentors, most businesses don't expect an audit. What an audit is when I look at their platforms and I look at various things. So I look at what platforms they're currently on, when they last posted or tweeted, what's their tone of voice, are they utilizing the uniqueness of the individual platforms, the quality of the imagery, the engagement value? I also do a quick Google search and look at their ranking information and what Google has highlighted, etc. So an audit can reveal a lot about a business very quickly. And then I kind of go into what I've noticed. So as the first session, even though businesses have a lot of questions that they think that they want help with. And as soon as I mentioned this audit, they realize actually there's different ways of going about it. And so it's kind of that, it's like eating a humble pie right at the start. And I'm a big fan of that, because sometimes we will go in saying, I panic, right? We panic a lot as businesses, creatives. We're like, oh, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And then I'll come in and I'm like, so this is what I've seen from a fresh pair of eyes, from an outsider. Did you notice this? And 90% of the time, it's surprising information where they had no idea that they were doing this. They had no idea that their tone of voice actually was completely different to the target audience that they intended to reach. So so then that's a really good starting point, which is, all right, so we've kind of figured out from an outsider, this is what I see. How can we now build upon this now? And then also go back to the original questions. I'm like, so this is what you originally asked for. Do you think there's a better way of going about kind of solving your problem? So that's kind of what I do as audit. And I recommend everyone looks at an audit. And I'll explain a little bit more later on about this.
Yeah, lovely. And do any particular examples spring to mind? Is there of where you've worked with a particular organisation? You might not want to name them, but that might be okay. But just sort of what you recommended and what impact it had.
Shall I go first?
Oh yeah, go on.
Go first.
Sorry, yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I think it's really interesting when we talk about, and Amrit's talked there about voice as well, and being aware of who you're talking to. I think, and yeah, I'm sure we'll come on to this more later. There is an aspect sometimes where we think about the different types of content we're pushing out in terms of the audiences that we're making or the audience we want to reach. We don't always necessarily think about our platforms in the same way. And I think the risk of that is that we sometimes make lots and lots of content aimed at different audience demographics, and then we put them all in the same place. I know examples where we have seen, there was a theatre that I worked with, for example, that really wanted to have a more youthful voice online. They wanted to speak to a younger audience. They had, thankfully, lots and lots of initiatives that really spoke to young people. They had student discounts on tickets, they had youth writing programs, they had apprenticeships, internships, all sorts of things going on. There was lots and lots of really, really good offers. And with that, they were able to obviously make a lot of content, positioning themselves in that way, talking about those opportunities that they had. But they would still get their fundraising department saying, well, we're doing a campaign asking people to remember us in their will, leave us a legacy donation and things like that. That's obviously speaking to a completely different audience. And when the material is put out there, that's gonna slam right into the feed like a smack in the mouth. It's really gonna feel like, oh, what is this? I thought I was following a very youthful organization talking to me as a young person. They've built up this audience of followers that were within a particular age demographic, and then they're just popping something out in the midst of all that doesn't really fit the voice they've developed, doesn't really fit the audience that they've developed. And I think sometimes we can be quite quick just to sling something out in a Facebook feed or a Twitter feed or put an Instagram post out about something that, because it doesn't cost us anything to do apart from time and energy, it's seen as we sort of might as well. And I think, unfortunately, bad content can do a lot more damage than we realize it can, even if it's been surrounded by fantastic, fantastic things. So that's one specific example that's come up a number of times.
Thank you. Amrit, I wondered if you had a specific example of where you've worked with an organisation to share with us.
Yeah, sure. So, there was loads that I could pick from, but one example, and this happens quite a lot, is that a business wanted very, very specific advice on Twitter, just that one platform, for example, and how to convert leads from Twitter to sell courses. So they were just interested in selling, making money. That's all it was. And so it was very specific conversations. And after the audit, which I spoke about earlier, we realized that there's actually no point even thinking about lead generation if the brand was really weak. No one trusted the brand. No one could buy from the brand because on social media it was a brand new brand. So and also the engagement was non-existent. So we changed the direction and spoke about the types of content that we can create or they can create to increase the trust of the brand, increase engagement, and run through making content accessible to the rest of the team. So they had an issue with, because their teams were all over the place, that they didn't know what was relevant, what was the latest imagery, what was the latest videos, how to get access to the latest login information for their platforms, and it was a bit of a mess. So that was a really interesting one. And another one is, and this happens a lot as well, is a business started off, one was ready to spend a lot of money on equipment and Adobe Premiere and hiring someone full-time to create video content for them, even though they were small organizations and they were struggling. And they hadn't produced any content, even though they had been promoting their shows for months, because they weren't ready. And we'll go into this later on as well. They didn't have the right equipment. They didn't have the right person in place. And so as I ran through sustainable content production, repurposing the existing content, and the biggest aha moment for them was when I spoke about affordable equipment. So I spoke about what equipment I use to create content on the go, what equipment they can use to create content running apps, and also how to create a content creation calendar to make it easy to digest what they want to create, and kind of having that bite-sized information. So I think those two are really key examples, which again I think will be very relevant to people in the audience about where they start and where they can end up.
Brilliant. Okay, so then after this session you're going to do your presentation, Amrit, so I'm just going to ask Rob another question, but I just want to just flag into you, you've got a couple of minutes if you need to go and get a drink of water or anything like that before you start. Sure. Okay, so Rob, just one last thought then. Anything else following on from what Amrit said about kind of building trust? Because I think that's a really interesting question that we were asked in advance about how do you build trust in something new?
I think it's a consistency, really. I think give yourself room to experiment and evolve and for things to change once you get started. But people respond fantastically well to consistency. They want to know, in return for someone following you in a particular place, giving you a follow on TikTok or Instagram or wherever it may be, they want to know that you're going to be dependable. This is something that you see in radio. People get upset when a particular DJ stops doing a show, or they switch around presenters or something like that. People want habitual content quite often as well, and I think it's important to try and do something that you can sustain. That isn't to say there's not a huge place for those tentpole pieces that are going to go out as a calling card, as an ambassador for you out into the world in order to bring people in. But if you're looking to do something on an ongoing nature, I think some consistency, some reliability is a really nice way of building up trust with an audience.
Thank you very much for all of that. So we're going to, in a minute, as I said, hand to Amrit to sort of talk you through his presentation on short form content creation and really getting into some of the answers to his questions in a way. But if you have questions already, you can use the chat function and type them into there, and Rob will be, if this is all right with you, Rob, will be kind of available, so that you might be able to direct questions to him, or there might be questions that you have for each other, or bits of ideas and examples of things that all of you have seen that you've thought were fantastic, or really sort of raised interesting questions. So that's really what we use that chat for.
I can see Angela's already doing a bit of that as well, which is fantastic. And Risha, I can see. I'll put some resources on from the website that are really worth checking out.
And while we're sort of thinking about sort of strategy and all of that, I wanted to just flag our next webinar, which is on the 23rd of February, where our speaker there is Amy Rusby. So she's a marketing consultant that we work with a lot, and she'll be really this is sort of like a partner to this session, really digging into some of those processes for building your strategy that Amrit and Rob are talking about. Okay, so with that then I will hand over to Amrit. And see, at the end of Amrit's talk, we'll have a sort of a 5-minute break and then go into much wider Q&A. So all the questions will get answered towards the end of the session. Thanks, Amrit.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. All right, so I'm just going to share my presentation. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see this? Excellent. Brilliant. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be talking and taking you through a bit more detailed information about short form content creation, focusing on creating video and tips and tricks. So I've already done an introduction to myself, but I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the content that I create. So I've been a content creator for about 8 years now, and I've been live streaming for 6 years. And so I produce content for brands as well as for myself on my platforms. And you can check out all of my stuff at Mr. Racing or at Rebel Creatives as well. So the types of content that I create are travel and behind the scenes. So do a lot of travels well, hopefully that'll come back, travel, but I used to do a lot of travel before lockdown, and behind the scenes information. So every time I go, I kind of take my audience with me. This is a very big content creation tip, and the type of content you can create to build trust is by taking people behind the scenes. Other stuff is to live stream, which I've done for the last 6 years through Twitter, through Twitch, through other platforms as well. So literally showing what's happening right now. Short form content on platforms like, oh, are we back? Yeah, okay, just froze for a minute. Short form content on platforms like TikTok, and art. I share a lot of my artwork and I absolutely love doing that, and public art sculptures as well. So as a just quick run through of the types of content that I share, that you can have a look at my platforms. And education as well, the last bit as well. Okay, so what is short form video? So short form content, as the name suggests, is content that is short, sweet, and easy to consume. Several social media platforms have introduced dedicated short form video options, which is amazing now. Vine, rest in peace, made it popular. Snapchat pioneered it. Instagram stories improved it. Twitter made it relevant. Facebook brought it to a wider audience. TikTok perfected it. YouTube are adapting to it, and Reels have run with it. Now, this is really important because a lot of people think that short form is just one platform, like TikTok, for example, but no. It has been created or made it popular through a number of platforms, all the way from Vine days, and it's continuing improving as we go along. So I wanted to just show you this slide very quickly, just to show you the types of platforms that short form is now being developed on and also created on. So you've got Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Byte, Twitter, and Snapchat. But the most popular 3 platforms are Instagram Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts. So these are the ones that I recommend you guys look at, and look at how you can use these platforms, because there's a lot of time and attention being put into these platforms. So popular types of short form content. One of the biggest questions I get asked a lot is, what types of content can I create to make my brand popular, or my brand build that trust and create relevant information? I think that's always the most difficult question. So I'm going to start off with that. Number 1, user generated content. So I'm going to play the video, and it's going to be on mute anyway, so while I'm talking. So user generated content is the most popular type of content at the moment on social media. It's content that is published by your users to build that trust. And so there's many ways that you can do this. It's about having a product or a brand or something to do. So in this video, you can see that users of the brand have created a really cool video promoting it in a really unique way, as in they sent it to space and back down again. So capturing content from your followers and brands, featuring in it your own short videos, lets your customers and audience have a voice and speak on behalf of your brand. So it's a really good way of experimenting. Think, if you've got a product or a service and it's becoming popular, how can you open up the doors to your users and say, look, we would love to see what type of content that you create, and we might feature it on our platforms. So that's definitely one thing that you can look at. Number 1 is user generated content. Number 2 is behind the scenes. I mentioned this right at the start. My art became very, very popular in a very short period. Within 2 years, it was international because I was sharing behind the scenes content. But behind the scenes content is normally very scary for businesses because they feel like they're giving their secret away. They feel like they are giving too much away. But there's a way of sharing the content behind the scenes to make your content relevant, but also the number one way of creating advocates for your brand or business is by showing how something was created and what is happening behind the scenes. No one likes a faceless brand anymore, no one. So the only way of really opening up those doors is by showing that human side of your business and your brand. So more and more consumers are seeking personalization and authenticity from brands. About 90% of consumers say authenticity is important when deciding which brands they like and support. So short form videos are an ideal place to give people a look past the logo and get inside the scoop of what goes on behind the scenes and how something is made. So there's a few examples on the right of how you can do that through art, through showing how a production was created, a performance behind the scenes. So a lot of theatre companies I've spoken to last year have started to do this, and it's been absolutely amazing. Instead of showing the production, you show what's to come. You know, that sneak peek, which drives excitement and also definitely drives more ticket sales as well when they see people performing of what's to come. Number 3 is educational and informal pieces. This is very, very popular. And in fact, it's one of the most popular types of content on platforms like TikTok, which are top tips, how-to guides like that. This subject became even more popular through lockdown because people were at home, wanted to do hobbies or wanted to learn new hobbies and talents, and they were constantly searching on YouTube and other platforms on how to do something. How can I start my business? How can I lose weight? How can I create something? And so what people started to do is create top tips on something that they knew a lot about, which became very popular. And this type of content is shareable content, which is, if you want to create content, is something that you want to think about is, what content can I share where I'm sharing snippets of my expertise, but it's shareable. People can reshare it to their friends and family and on their platforms, which then help you in turn as well. So on the right, there's examples. One of the biggest and most popular types of education and informative content is MUA stuff, so makeup content. It's very, very popular. Other ways are tech stuff, so web design, how to, on the technical side, art, tips and tricks, mental well-being. These are just a few examples of how-tos. So I definitely recommend, if you're struggling with content ideas, think about, what do you sell? What do you provide a service? What product do you sell? And how can you share snippets of top tips, which will help bring that trust element up, and then also people will then invest in your business. I always say to businesses that you should always think about giving. You should always do give some more, and then sell. If you run in with a sell first thing, people will be like, whoa, what are you doing? And then they'll back off. But if you provide a bit of insight, then they'll want more. And then because they'll appreciate all the insight that you've given, they'll want to invest in you afterwards as well. So number 3 is educational. Number 4 is tease new products. And this is a fantastic way. If you've got a new up and coming service, you've got a new product, you've got an exciting update in your business, teasing is a fantastic way to create new short form content on different platforms. So it boosts your brand's credibility, creating a snappy FAQ, frequently asked questions video. It's all about common questions posed to your company. It's a really good place to start on stories, for example. So that's Instagram stories, LinkedIn stories, WhatsApp stories, any stories platform, because it's very short and sweet. It's a very easy way of teasing new content. So you can create a 15-second video teasing something, then leading up to a follow-up post, leading up to a link to buy or link to sign up, for example. So think about how you can create short form videos to tease something that's coming. And that's a really good way of ticking off a content in a short, easy way. And number 5 are challenges. So Challenges have become very popular in the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years. I mean, down to a platform like TikTok, because they have constant challenges every single week, not just from the platform itself, but also from businesses and brands. Challenges are also a really good way of creating user-generated content, which is tip number 1. And an example on the right is Samsung. They created a content. You had to register and get your TikTok account verified, post your content and make it public alongside your profile with the hashtag #PowerAwesome. They had a ton of videos because they wanted to win something. They could win a Galaxy phone. So think about how you can create a challenge, which is really, really cool, where people want to be part of it, where they'll gain something from it. Now, sometimes they're not going to gain a physical product, but they can gain a community, they can gain clout, they can gain happiness as well. So World Health Organization, for example, or there's agricultural companies around the world have done this through dance challenges or showing how something is being made in a really popular way to show a sense of community around the world. One of the videos which again is openly viewable is exactly that. There was a campaign on TikTok which was from an agricultural company in Africa, where they showed how food was sourced and how it ended up on your table, for example. And it created a challenge which was show us how you create your food, or show us the source of your food, or show us how your food is made. And it was brilliant. People love to share, this is my dish, but instead of the final dish, this is actually the ingredients, and this is the local farmers market where I bought it from, and so on and so forth. So challenges are a really fun way of creating content and creating shareable content. 3 examples I want to share with brands that are doing fantastic when it comes to content, creating short form content. Number 1 is Oreo. Oreo is known for its simple, creative, and social media content, and its Instagram videos do not disappoint. The short form video is a great example of fun, creative ways that work perfectly for the platform and promotes a product. So have a look at their Instagram page and have a look at how they promote a product like Oreo. One thing I like about Oreo is that they always think about the imagination. How can they take a product, create a whole world around it? So an example, strange. An example is this. So all they did, they hired a stop motion animator to doodle around an Oreo. That's it. And it was shareable. A lot of people loved it, and the great thing about this, people created their own versions. So people had the Oreo biscuit just lying around. They're like, actually, I'm going to create my own doodle. And it was really, really cool. Burger King, again, they are very clever with the types of content they create, but this is the first time they created a video without any sound. So they signed the entire video, and it became very, very popular because it was one of the first ever videos where a massive brand changed their logo to fit the video, but also just signed the entire video with their mascot as well. So think about how you can use content in a really clever way, thinking about accessibility as well, but also you don't need to use sound, and it's still very, very powerful. And the third one is Slurpee. They wanted to sell 150,000 sport bottles full of freezing Slurpee to an audience. And they found a very clever way of doing it, which was putting a product in an unlikely situation or scenario, which anyone can do. And this is one of the videos. There's a lot of screaming, by the way. So they played around with different types of extreme sports. So there was go-karting, there was bungee jumping, there was theme parks, and it was just a really fun way. It just showed, the previous cup was easy to spill, the new one wasn't, and they all sold out. So these are 3 different examples on different platforms, not just, they were like Facebook, there were Instagram, and there was TikTok as well, which did really, really well. So before you start creating any content, there are 5 questions to ask, which I definitely recommend. So number 1, ask yourself, who is your audience? How old are they, and what are they interested in? This will also help define the type of content that you want to create. Number 2, are you creating a timely standalone statement piece or ongoing serialized conversation that unfolds over time? So The difference between these two is traditionally with any type of video content, it's a one video you produce, it's gone onto the platform and it's done. However, what's become very popular over the last few years is different parts to a video, which you release over a period of time. So people come back. There's a reason for people to come back. I love those type of videos, and I have sometimes got hooked into them. So think about, instead of investing a lot of time into one video, how can you create one part with a cliffhanger, second part with a cliffhanger, third part with a cliffhanger, and bring people back to your platform instead of just that one video? Number 3, can it thrive in virtually any content? So can it be on a website, blog, emails, social media, inside a presentation, and webinars? Remember, short form covers all of those. Short form video is one element of short form, but then we have short form in written content, blogs, websites, presentations, emails, so on and so forth. Is it better suited to being consumed on both desktop and mobile environments, or just one? If so, why? So desktop and mobile can be very, very differently. The difference between landscape and portrait videos and the type of the length of the video, and also the caption will change depending on which platform you want to target. And can it be repackaged, repurposed, and republished in conjunction with your other relevant content? So that, again, we mentioned sustainable content earlier today. That's exactly that. So can you create any content that's evergreen? Will it be shareable in a year's time, in a few months' time, or will it become out of date? If it is out of date, how do you then make sure that it's not reshared again in the future?
Amrit, can I ask you to pause for a second? Just we've had a request to just pause so that somebody could catch up with reading your slides.
Sure, of course.
If that's all right, can I ask you a question while that's happening? Which is, so you know the 3 examples you gave us where the brands have been really successful. They've all got a physical product there. How do you? It's an obvious question, really, but how do you translate that into, if you were working as I don't know, in a theatre or music, and you don't have a physical thing to talk about? How do you sort of make sure you can have that same impact if it's performance, say?
Sure. So it's pretty much the exact same thing, really. So there's 2 ways that you can do this. I mentioned behind the scenes content at the start. For any shows or theaters, behind the scenes content is one of the best types of content that you can produce, which shows, again, you're providing a bite-sized snippet of what's to come, and you kind of increasing that excitement. When you share any types of behind the scenes content, it's kind of a sense of privilege from the audience that you're being given this peek behind the curtain. So that's number 1. Number 2 is asking your entire team or performers to create content as well on the side. So we did this with a few theatre companies last year, which was, instead of seeing your production team or your performers as a team assets, instead of asking them to record content on their phones throughout the day that then you can collect at the end and share, this gave a brilliant a day in the life of, which people absolutely love. So imagine you wanted to sell a performance or a theatre, and you had one of the dancers just record 3-second snippets of behind the scenes. They were talking to the camera. I'm really excited about this. This is what's coming. Check out my outfit. What do you think of this? What color do you prefer? And then you just put these 3 seconds videos together, and you created a 1-minute video or a 30-second video. Those became very, very popular for the end product for the show. So I would recommend those types of content for those, is behind the scenes and also a day in the life of.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And then we've said that the recording of the webinar will be available on YouTube for anybody else.
Yes.
Carry on.
Yes.
So please do carry on. Thank you.
Cool. Sorry, I can't see the chat at the moment.
You can't. That's right. So, but just So just a pause, a brief pause at the end of the slide would be a lovely thing. Thank you.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, so tip number 1 in terms of content creation that's recommended is show a different side of your brand. Short form video is a brilliant way to show off your creativity and light-hearted side. Embracing a more personal tone or a behind the scenes approach could make your brand appear more relatable or trustworthy to potential customers and advocates. So don't just ask, but give. And I did mention this earlier as well, really important. So an example, a day in the life of, as we just mentioned, asking questions or feedback, sharing short stories, time-lapse and behind the scenes videos. These are examples of the types of content that you can create. Sharing short stories, it has become quite popular in the last year or so, especially with lockdown. We've all been through something which is relatable, all of us. It's the one thing which is relatable across the world, and the types of videos which are really heartwarming, which are how you've overcome something. It's important to understand that as a business, sharing ups and downs with the rest of your audience is a good thing. It's not always, you don't always want to be putting out that, yeah, we're brilliant, we're fine, we're doing epic. Sometimes the videos that have done really, really well is when a business is like, you know what, we're short on staff at the moment, or our team are all over the place. It's a little bit difficult, but we're working towards it. Those type of videos is honest, and they are upfront, and they're relatable because everyone's going through the same thing. So those type of stories in a video format do very, very well. So number one, show a different side of your brand. Number two, don't wait for the right equipment. I mentioned this as one of the examples earlier today, which is one of the businesses didn't share any content because they were waiting for the right equipment. Don't do that, please, because when it comes to creating short form content, the possibilities are endless. Budgets vary, yes, and the needs evolve. So one of the biggest questions I always ask when I'm speaking to any business is, what equipment do you have right now? And we're always pleasantly surprised that they have a very powerful smartphone in their pocket. Instead of buying a very expensive camera, you can record all of your content on your smartphone. In fact, all of the content that I've been producing on my platforms have been shot on my phone and edited on my phone. I don't bother with any expensive equipment unless it's for a larger brand. Any recommended equipment is this. So I was going to ask kind of what type of equipment can you start off with? What's the starter pack look like? So a lav mic or a lavalier mic, which is a clip-on mic, is cheap, affordable, and definitely worth getting. You can get a smartphone ring light, a charger cable, a little tripod, and a battery pack. Those are the things that people get definitely recommended if you want to create content on the go. Then obviously,
so that would be perhaps what, a couple of £100 to buy sort of starter versions of those things.
Oh, less than 100. Yes, I think so. When we run digital boot camps for young people, and we give starter packs to them as a price, and the starter pack is £50 and under. And it's a really affordable way of literally having a tripod, a ring light, a cable, a battery pack, and a mic to get started. So there's other stuff that you can evolve to. You can have ring lights, you can have soft boxes, LED lights, a studio mic, a gimbal, but these are examples of the types of equipment you can get.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Okay, no worries. Number three, creating content which is unique for each platform. So every platform has its own rules, and you should abide by them. What I mean by abiding by them is, yes, it's always good to break the rules, but each platform has its uniquenesses. There's a hashtag that works very well on one platform and not on another platform as well. What I don't recommend is being the Hootsuite of the social media world. And what I mean about that is it's very easy to do this, by the way. And I think everyone's done this. I think when I first got into content creation, I did it because it was easy, where I created one content and I just shared it across 6 platforms. It was done. It was easy. What I realized is I was started to lose followers on different platforms because they were asking the question, why am I following this guy if he's sharing the exact same content on all these platforms? There's nothing unique about this platform. And I was also losing engagement that way as well. So every platform has its own rules and regulations. Definitely have a little look at into each one and see what works as well. Number 4 is creating new content and repurpose old content. So think about old content. I kind of mentioned this earlier, is your content out of date? When you do a content audit, this will help massively. And what I mean about an audit is basically looking at every hard drive that you've got, every email, every online storage, and collating all the content that you've produced into one space, and then splitting them up into old content, which is no longer relevant, and archive it into new content that can be reshared and repurposed down the line as well. So sharing new content or sharing old content is a very quick win in creating content and increasing your engagement. And number 5 is experiment with your footage. Year after year, our attention span does get shorter and shorter, unfortunately. So videos do change from 15 seconds to even 6 seconds as well. But one thing that people are constantly thinking about is how can they capture the attention of the user? And there's many different ways that you can do this. You can change the angle of the shot. You can have voiceovers. You can have equipment and have other people in it as well. So when I create content, I'm always thinking about I try to cut the track or cut the video on the beat of the music and also have as many angles as possible. It definitely helps. Every so often have a call to action at the end of the video, and every so often have a voiceover. When they hear your voice on a video, it has that personal touch as well, which helps. I have got content that I've created, but I'm not sure, Linda, if you want me to share it right now or later on.
Let's have a break first. When you finish these slides, we'll have a short break and then we'll come back and see some of your content. I think that would be great.
Yeah, okay. So just to recap, and then we'll have a break, is show a different side of your brand. Don't wait for the right equipment. Create content which is unique for each platform. Create new videos and repurpose old content. Experiment and be creative with your footage. And most importantly, have fun.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amrit.
No worries.
Okay, so we've got some questions, but we'll take 5 minutes. Thank you for all of that. So much information in there. Take 5 minutes and then we'll come back and with Rob and Amrit and go into some of the questions. So anything else you want to add in, now would be a really good time. And we'll see you at 11:56. Okay, so we're back on. I'll get Amrit and Rob to come back on screen, and then we'll get into some of the questions that we've been asked. And I'm going to start by Amrit. Rob answered this question already really briefly, but one of the questions that was just asked, and sort of you've touched, well, not touched on, you've been looking at phones. Somebody said, is a phone, is it better to record using a phone? Is it better to record using a phone or desktop apps if you're making short form content? Do you think it's best?
And I think all I said was that you'd start to touch upon kit within your presentation. But yeah, I agree. It's a great question.
Yeah. So I always recommend, if you want the best affordable option, it's always on your phone. A lot of people do get scared when they think about editing video on their phones, because they're like, can I even press it? Is the buttons really small? There's an app called InShot, InShot, which is one of the best iPhone apps for a smartphone ever. In fact, all the digital boot camps that we run for young people, we have a whole training session on how to use InShot, and every video that they've produced has been using that app, and I've been using it for about 5 years now. So definitely download it for free. Have a play around with it. I've created 5-minute videos on my phone and it's been brilliant. So I would recommend your phone.
Yeah, I would. The only thing that I would add to it is that you may find, and particularly if you're in large organizations or if you've got third-party stakeholders, I know a few people that do say their bosses or their bosses' bosses or their bosses' bosses' bosses sometimes will just say, "I'll just email it through to me and I'll look at it at my desk," and things like that. And that is still a huge barrier for a lot of people. I completely agree with everything Amrit said. I would say if you've got people you need to proof things to, it's really worth really pushing to show them the material in situ. I know someone who has said that, you know, even the best social copy doesn't make sense when it's printed out in a board report or when it's viewed on a CEO's laptop or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, if there are other people in that chain, do try and show it to them in situ, try and show it to them on a phone, try and show it to them as it's going to be consumed by the public.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. And there's a couple of other questions that have come, which I think relate to each other in a way. One is somebody saying specifically, when you're trying to make your work and think about social media and creating an audience for it, and for a lot of people, they've got another job as well. How do you balance the time? How much time would you spend creating content for social? And the second question, which I think probably comes into the same question of how do you manage your time, is would you recommend posting every day? So who would Amrit, so I'd go to you first.
Okay. So again, that's always a popular question. When I first started in social media, I felt the exact same thing, by the way. I felt it was very overwhelming, even thinking about creating content, because the idea of creating content seemed like it was a lot. Until I broke it down into bite-sized information and bite-sized kind of pieces. And what I realized is the best way for me to create content and not make it seem like it's overwhelming is by creating content as I go along and then posting when I have time to kind of edit it together. So what I did, this is a good few years ago, is every so often I would record 2 seconds or 3 seconds of video footage of something I'm creating or I'm working on or I'm traveling or I'm on the train. And then when I've got time, just I'm sitting down, I would post them to my stories or I would pull them together into a 30-second video. I don't recommend posting every single day because that is a bit of a headache. I recommend posting when you feel like posting. It's really important is as soon as you start posting and you force it, your audience will know it. Your audience will know that you're forcing content out and on them because your passion isn't in it. And when your passion's not in it, it's a completely different type of content that you're creating. So even though, yes, I've got an audience that loves seeing my content, I'm at a stage right now where I'm like, I will post content on social media whenever I feel like it. And if I don't feel like it, I will not post anything. I think that's the best way, not only for quality, but also for your mental health as well.
Is now a good time to kind of carry on sort of talking about, because we were going to get you to you were going to look at some of your own content. Does that feel like a good sort of segue into that?
We could, or we can do it afterwards. I think it'd be good to kind of run through some of these questions.
Right, fine, I'll come back to you afterwards. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Rob, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a couple of very brief points, echoing things that Amrit have said and absolutely underlining them. Yeah, that point about making content and almost not building up a backlog of content, but you don't have to publish on the same day that you create a piece of content. It's really useful if you're not sort of hand to mouth with your content in that way. Content can feel a bit like a sort of conveyor belt or a furnace that we have to keep throwing coal into, and it shouldn't feel like that. It's absolutely right. If there's a day when you don't want to post something, don't post something, you know. And again, I'd echo, bravo, your audience do know if your heart's not in it. Someone said earlier on this question about the difference between almost a marketing calendar and a content creation calendar. And I think it is really useful to make that definition, that you don't have to be going out, you're at a festival, you take a photo, you publish it at that moment. It doesn't have to happen in that way. I also wanted to pick up as well on what Amrit said right at the end there about your mental health. You know, do be aware of your mental health. Amrit, me and you have talked about this a number of times, the kind of the impact that it can have and the importance to recognize the fact that there may be some platforms that you don't particularly enjoy being on, and you don't have to be on them. You know, you don't have to be a comprehensive media empire with channels and you know, profiles on every single platform. At the same time, be aware of the time that it's taking you to do these things, and that balance as an artist as well, I think is really, really, really important to recognize. You're not striving for a post every single day on every single platform of every single type. You know, it is important to really focus on what you're achieving and what you're getting back from this. So yeah, again, I'd add a bravo to that point. I think it's really important.
And carrying on sort of on the thinking about, you know, not putting too much pressure on yourself. Somebody's asking about how do you overcome the fact that some other people in the organization who are creating content don't, or should be creating content, don't have any skills. How do you kind of get people to to get other people you work with to build up some confidence really and capture content?
That's a tough one. Is always getting people to create content. You know what, we've tried it. You have to tailor it to whichever organization you're working with. There is no one answer for this. For example, with an organization we worked with last year, we had a group session with all of them to kind of show them how easy it was to create content on your phone and the value of it as well. I think the best way of it is just to experiment and try it out. There's no, you can't force someone to create content if they don't want to, if they think it's too much. But one thing that has worked is group training sessions where as a group you're step by step using a platform or using the software and actually they realize it's quite straightforward.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Rob, is there anything else you'd add to that?
Yeah, I'm just going to add, just in case I've confused anyone in my differentiations between, I can see Fiona, thank you for picking up on this, the difference between, a content creation calendar and a sort of content management calendar, with one being very much about when the material is made. So it may be that you are preparing to go on a tour with a show that's going to take you 4 months to get ready to go on the road, but it may be that you don't start releasing those behind the scenes clips until a different time, until close to the time. You might want to say we're here in 2 weeks time and do a big push of that 4 months worth of content all at once. It's about when you're making things versus when you're putting things out, and that's what I'm trying to differentiate between. Is you may have one calendar that says actually these are the opportunities within the installation of our exhibition or the creation of our work or wherever it might be. These are the points where we need to get a camera out, or we need to go and interview someone, or we need to film a bit of something, or take some photos, or whatever it might be. These are the points when we need to capture the process, and then these are the points when we're going to put those things out. And it's just about recognizing the difference between those two things. I hope that's not more confusing. I hope that's clarified in some.
We shall find out. I'm sure it's clarified. And I've just noticed that Elise has put a follow-up question to her one about, you know, the difficulty of getting people to make content, but it is, as Amrit said, there is no one answer. So what I would suggest, if the audience have any advice for Elise or examples of what have worked, it would be great to put those into chat, because I think it might not be one answer.
Do you know, I do have actually one thing that I can do for this, which is, so I worked at Birmingham Royal Ballet for a long time, where there were lots and lots of things going on all over the building. And I think the bit that made the difference in terms of getting people to start generating content, even just taking photos and things like that, was try and be as visible as possible within your organization about what happens to that content and what the impact was. So as soon as you have people in your organization where you know, did you know that the lighting team took these photos of the setup, or took a photo from right up in the roof of the theatre, or they took a photo, you know, wherever it might be, this went out, you know, well done to the lighting team. We've just had 300 likes on this photo. And as soon as that starts happening, as soon as there's a sort of, I don't want to say a game, but as soon as there is a kind of a thing in place where people are seeing, this one did this, this one did this, people got far more engaged. There was one tour they did where the entire company split in two, with half of them touring to smaller venues in the north, half to smaller venues in the south. We knew that the dancers made t-shirts with Team North, Team South written on it, and there was a real sense of kind of camaraderie within that. And we had them, I think it was blogging or taking photos or something, and we unofficially awarded points for the best photo at different times. And just by doing that, all of a sudden, there was this huge flurry and influx of people sending in really creative photos. So it's that thing. I think it's about them knowing, okay, what happens next? What's the impact of this? Even if it is just, you know, a numbers game or whatever.
Can I ask a question that was asked in advance? It's very platform specific, but really about building audiences. And somebody has asked, and again, whoever has an answer, just wave your hand. What about WhatsApp? How successfully could you use WhatsApp as an audience building tool? Either of you got any thoughts on that?
I suppose my thought when it comes to content and platforms is always about data and analytics that are available to you. It was one of the reasons why I think Snapchat was such a challenge for a lot of brands and organizations, because the actual analytics that you could get out of that were virtually non-existent unless you were putting a lot of money into it. That's the one thing I'd say with WhatsApp is you can build something up. The level of data you can get back, the level of insight that you can get back isn't fantastically high. That being said, it can be a really nice way of getting content out there, releasing out to the world. It's just the fact that analytics I've not yet seen, and Amber, you might have, but I've not seen anything yet that makes the case for the data and the insight yet.
Yeah, I think was it WhatsApp that you said, right? Yeah, WhatsApp. So I know a few people who've been using WhatsApp really, really well in terms of growing an alternative to an email mailing list. So there's an artist who I know who he has a huge group that people can sign up to. And before he produces anything or sells it online or releases a training program or anything like that, he whitelists. He's basically, the WhatsApp group is a whitelist where he lets them know first before he lets his email list know, before he lets his social media know. And he does brilliantly well. I mean, I think he's got 5,000 people in his WhatsApp group that sign up. And he sells a lot of work. He sells a lot of art because people love being in this exclusive group. And it's like having a Discord as well, which is another messaging platform, which has become very, very popular as well. So there are definitely alternative ways and benefits of having WhatsApp and having Discord, for example, but there has to be a specific reason for why you want to use that platform. And also, it's a lot of work to get to that point, though. It's not easy convincing people to join your group, because there's a lot that happens. There's a lot of people commenting. There's a lot of trust level as well. So yeah, do a lot of research before I think you should delve deep into that.
That's really interesting as well, because you've crucially got a mechanic there through booking the pieces, buying the pieces, purchasing the pieces. That then becomes your measure of success. That becomes the thing that tells you, is this working or not, if it's converting sales. And actually the fact that they're giving people weeks extra notice, it's that way of saying, well, I know that in this week, if I have these sales, I know that came from WhatsApp. That's really clever. Yeah,
or you can even have an affiliate link as well directly, which is just for your WhatsApp group, so you can track exactly who's like where from and all the demographics and all that kind of stuff as well.
Brilliant.
Okay, and so carrying on from this, somebody's asking whether you have any opinions or knowledge about social platforms for Mandarin speaking audiences. Is that anything either of you can speak to?
No, I don't know much about this.
Again,
the only thing I would say is just be aware of so I'm saying culture with a little c. We talk about the cultures of different platforms that you're making use of, and just be aware of how it's being used, because I think we've had this with a few different countries where they've said people just think, oh, it's just Twitter's being used in the same way, and it just isn't, you know. People think, oh, I'm sure that this site looks like Instagram. I'm sure people behave on it exactly like Instagram. That's not the same. I mean, we've seen, if you compare Vimeo and YouTube, for example, which are on paper fairly similar, the entire culture is completely different on there. Again, little c. So it's that sort of thing. If you're looking to move into different nations, into different countries and things like that, just be aware of how those things are being used, and make sure that it's something that you can sustain. Again, I said at the top of the day, have a think about what you're going to do if these things are hugely successful. Is that something that you are going to maintain and manage and commit to if it takes off? Yeah.
And also, I think each country also has their own social media platforms that are popular. Just because in the West we have these platforms, in other countries it's not going to be exactly the same. Like, for example, you have in China, the most popular platforms are like Weibo and WeChat, so chat functions, and they have their own version of TikTok, which isn't the same that we have as well. So it's country to country is very specific, and cultural is very specific with small c. As
we give a little nod as well to Chloe and Culture Syndicates, who typed Weibo and WeChat in the chat almost just as you
nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So also there was another question from Culture Syndicates about whether you would, a bit further back, but would you recommend hiring somebody specifically in this sort of digital producer creator role to create content, or do you think it fits into a general marketing role? Amrit, what would your take be on that?
So this kind of question that also goes into influencer marketing as well. So or you can tailor it to what you're going to be creating. So if you want to create user-generated content, then I definitely recommend you start looking at those who are interested in your brand, who are advocates for your brand, on how you can ask them to create content for you. Yes, you can also hire a content creator, and if you have the budget for it, it's definitely going to pay off in the long run. But at the same time, a lot of people are trying to learn the right skills for themselves so they can understand what it takes to produce content for their own company first before they venture out. Influencer marketing is something which I definitely recommend people look into as well. If you are in a certain industry, there's an influencer, whether it's a micro, macro, or a larger influencer that you can work with, definitely look at alternative ways of working with them. I definitely recommend looking at micro influencers. Micro influencers are 10,000 followers, around that range plus, where you can collaborate with, especially if you're starting off. If you're a creative starting off, one thing that I did when I had hardly any followers is I looked at talented people in different industries that I could team up with. So for example, I was creating art. I found an amazing interior designer that I teamed up with. He did a photo shoot of amazing sofas and the setup, and I just hung my art as a dress up, and then we both shared photographs on our platforms, and it was a really good collaboration, and I got into a different industry. So think about clever ways of creating content and collaborate. We haven't even mentioned the word collaboration, Rob. It's insane.
I know,
collaboration
yeah.
is a big thing. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So there's a couple of other questions. One is about how does somebody find what they're actually saying is, do you have anything like a pen portrait of who you think the audiences are for each platform, the general demographic from users of TikTok, Reels, etc.? Or how would you find it?
So there's two ways of doing it. So actually, I'm going to go back and talk about, someone mentioned marketing strategy and content creation strategy. So marketing strategy is your overall strategy. Think about an umbrella. That's called your marketing strategy. Underneath your marketing strategy, you have your brand guidelines, brand strategy, content creation strategy, social media strategy, and then many other little ones as well. So they're not one or the other. They're actually under the umbrella of marketing strategy. And so when you're looking at brand strategy and also social media strategy, one of those elements is audience personas. And what an audience persona is you create your ideal audience for your business, and then you look at your insights and look at your existing audience personas. So Rob mentioned insights, massively popular. What I definitely recommend is looking at every single platform that you're currently on, look at insights, look at the stats. Twitter has a lot of in-depth stats, Facebook does, Instagram does, and they'll show you your demographics, your gender mix, and a lot more information from that as well. So that will build up your current audience. But then part of your strategy, you should be looking at your audience persona is, who is your ideal audience? Who do you want to reach? Where do they live? What do they do for a living? What do they dress like? Where do they drink coffee? You can name them if you want. Audience personas help businesses when they are creating content, because they're like, I want to create content for X person, because that person is going to be checking their social media on their lunch break. They shop at these places. They love these type of adverts. They love buying X, Y, and Z. So we want to reach those type of those type of individuals. So think about current and future audiences.
Okay, lovely. Rob, anything to add to that?
No, I thought that was fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Elise is asking, can you repeat that? But I think, Elise, you'll have to explain what it is that you would like repeated. Be really helpful. Thank you. Oh, okay. All right. And the other, go on,
No,
Rob.
I was going to say, I was just going to pick up on a couple of comments that have been made in the chat during that as well. Joe Johnson said, am I wrong? Facebook seems to have massively reduced their insights recently. Very difficult to see who they are now. Yeah, I would say that the Facebook, the back end of Facebook is one of the most frustrating websites on the internet, and they do quite regularly make changes to what you can see. or they put it under a different title, or they put it under a different banner, or they trial another one at the same time and merge them in two halfway through, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I think it's about having a look at what are the metrics that you're able to measure your success by. It may be that some of the metrics have reduced or gone away. Video, yeah, Facebook for Business is a total nightmare. I completely agree with you.
Yeah,
there are lots of things keep changing. It used to be that some of the analytics I used to use as an indicator for Facebook video, for example, have completely switched around. Some figures just are not available to you anymore, which is hugely frustrating if you're trying to compare year-on-year activity. It is really difficult. I think some of the stuff is still in there. Unfortunately, you do have to do an increasing amount of Googling to find out quite where they've moved everything around to on a particular day. But yeah, I share that frustration.
Thank you. And I'm just going to flag, not as a question to you, but I think it's a marvellous piece of giving it a go. Mike Wynn is saying, please could you throw some ideas out for a week of social media content for a visual artist / musician with 300 followers? What would you be doing? So I really think that's a question for the whole audience. What would you like to see? What if you are the audience for Mike, what would you want to see on there? So any ideas very welcome, I think.
Or maybe I would throw it back to so what can you provide? What's your USP? What should I look at if you were showing me something, and why should I?
Which Amrit's showing why he's a really good mentor. He's coming straight back with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you mind, and this might feed into it as well, do you mind if I pick up on, I know that there's a, I saw Elise and Neve talking in the chat as well about the challenges faced by small marketing teams, maybe one-person marketing teams, maybe only doing a couple of days a week, not being in the room when things are happening. So when, if you have I think performance company has been named at one point as well, if you're a marketing person who is not in the room for those rehearsals as well, or I think people have talked here as well about that you may have a creative lead at the top of the organization whose priority is not digital, who is not there to do those sorts of things. I would say, again, think about two things. First of all, people will have photos on their phone. They will have taken photos of something. People do take pictures, see what they're already capturing, see what's interesting to them. And at the same time, maybe simplify your expectations for what that content is going to be. There are still lots and lots of people doing very, very successful email bulletins with nothing more than text and sound bites and interviews and related stories and things like that. It may be that it is as simple as Instagram photos. And I would also say, speaking of which, do have a look at, if you've got an Instagram account, look and see what you're being tagged in. I know dance spaces that are beautiful, beautiful buildings that just get fantastic light, even if it's a space that you're renting. They get fantastic light, and we go in and we go, gosh, this is brilliant. And then once we've been there for 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years, we sort of forget what looks impressive or photogenic about even the spaces that we're in as well. So I would say sometimes these photos can be really, really simple, really, really engaging, really, really great in their aesthetic, for being really, really simple things as well. So yeah, that's probably my advice on that. But yeah, the other one is, even if you've got a small team, ask them what they've got in their photo roll that they took in work, because you'd be surprised what people have got.
Also, you just remind me of one thing as well, is one of the things that I read, one of the types of content that became really popular for me in the early days of live streaming was my own city. One of the things that we take for granted is the city that we live in, is our journey to work, our journey home, what we do on lunchtime. And it was through live streaming, and I was talking about all these buildings around Birmingham and other areas. I was like, no, I had no idea this was here. I had no idea. I actually walk past this every single day. So I started to share that on social media, and other people who had never been to Birmingham were like, whoa, that's cool. Can I see more of that? So sometimes we look so far ahead that we stop looking at what's around us, focus on here, now, at the present. So I always recommend, if you're struggling for content or you're struggling for ideas, look around. Look at your journey to work, look at your journey back to work. Think about how you can promote the building you're in, the city that you're in as well, and shout out about that even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Amrit posed the question before to the musician and artist about what's your USP. And often our place, our location, our city is part of that, is part of that personality as well. And it's really worth, having a think about those aspects as well.
And I think someone asked about equipment. So I'm going to drop in a lav mic with a lightning connector in the chat. Lav mics are normally about £10 the cheapest, but for a lav mic connector, it tends to be another £10. So this one is $19.99. And there's a ring light, which I'll pop into the chat as well, which is recommended.
Okay. We've just got a couple of minutes left before we finish up. And I wanted to, so just if there's any last questions. Oh, yeah, good, brilliant. Thank you, Amrit. If just sort of before we finish up, really, is there, if either of you had a single piece of advice, what's the most important thing that you tell people in this kind of work? Rob, is there anything that really sticks into your mind?
Yeah, I suppose you don't have to try and be what you think you should try and be, if that makes sense. I've said a couple of times, you don't have to be posting every day. You don't have to be posting all types of content and doing all manner of different things. I think there is an element where we sometimes fixate on who we're not reaching rather than who we are reaching. I talked to someone the other day and the example given was, it's as if Saga Holidays offering cruises to retirees were suddenly looking at graphs and realizing they weren't reaching any teenagers. It's not who their audience are, it's not what their offering is, and I think we sometimes think, should we be on TikTok to reach young people? Should we be on LinkedIn to reach the business community, or whoever it might be? I don't think that's the right approach. I think we should look at what we've got available to us, exactly as Amrit says, what's our USP, who do we need to reach, and trying to do that strategically. A few people have used in their questions the word effective, and it's really worth saying, what effect are we trying to have? What are we trying to generate with this piece of content, with this post, with this, update, whatever it might be, and really, really kind of stick to that. Otherwise, it's just madness to try and do everything just for the sake of it.
Okay, and Amrit, I was going to ask you the same question, but I've just noticed I've missed one, which I suspect you might have a question back to the and the question they have asked is, what is the best way to advertise a course on social media without having every post on your feed all about advertising the same opportunity over and over again?
Good question. So this is exactly the advice I did for the previous mentoring person, which is look at what you're selling in terms of the course and then provide top tips based around the course that you can create a video on. So for example, if the course is about a coffee cup, random, right? And it's a 10-minute video all about how brilliant this coffee cup is and why you should use this coffee cup. I would pull out 5 top tips, which is a very short snippet of that, and produce a video. And it could be text only. It could be, so you can talk, you can have a voiceover, it could be a video. But what you're doing is that you're basically showing the audience, here's a snippet, a brief insight into this course that you can buy, which is a full 10-minute course or a 4-week course. Look how cool it is, look how brilliant it is. It's even shareable. And then if you're really interested, here's a link. So one way that I did with the previous company that I worked with, we actually split 5 top tips into 5 different posts over a series of weeks. So on the Monday, tip number 1, did you know that this coffee cup was made in X country where X, Y, and Z is happening? For more information, check out our website. Week number 2, did you know? So after 4 weeks, with a link, people started to check out the website. They were really interested and they signed up to the course as well. So I would recommend, think about how you can repurpose the content in a really fun, clever way.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And somebody's also asking, what microphone are you using at this moment, Amrit?
Oh, this one's called a Blue. It's called Blue. I can't remember what it's called now. The company's called Blue. Search for BLU mic. It's called Yeti mic. That's it. A Blue Yeti USB mic.
Okay. So,
do you mind, Linda, if I very, very quick, just
really quick,
pick up on really quick. So Joe Johnson has said, as publicly funded organisations, we feel obliged to reach who we're not already in order to justify funding. And ACE are pushing for that too. It makes it hard to fend off why aren't we on TikTok questions. I mean, what I would say is, you're looking at this digital content in terms of something that is going to support what you're doing offline or what you're doing in person as well. The last thing that ACE want everyone to try and be is all things to all people. There are particular audiences that your in real life, in person offering is going to reach. And I think it's really, really important to focus on that. Otherwise, we are becoming ballet companies that put on a rock opera, once because they think this is going to bring in a new audience. And then they go back to doing Stravinsky and Tchaikovsky the following month. It's got to be about who are the people who we're reaching meaningfully with a meaningful offering. And I would stress that, if you're going to say to your funders, we've got this TikTok account that has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of our offerings, that just, it feels like it just starts to compromise the identity of who your organization are. Again, we've seen lots of people suddenly discover they've got huge online audiences in Australia or something like that. But if you're being funded by Creative Scotland to support the people who've done Dumfries, that doesn't mean anything. So, I would say that those funders, you shouldn't feel that pressure to be all things to all demographics, because that's not what you should be. Thanks, Joe. I could see you've added it.
So I'm going to have to bring it to an end there, because we're right out of time, and we would plead with everybody to please fill in the evaluation form which you will be presented with as you leave. Somebody's asked about mentoring. The space has various mentoring schemes running at different times, so if you keep you're on the mailing list, you'd hear more about those ones that were relevant to you. And I just want to finish, I'm speeding up as we're running out of time, to say thank you so much to Rob and to Amrit for all that fantastic information and input, and for answering the questions so generously. And thank you all audience for being with us for the session, and look forward to seeing you all again on the 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Linda.
Bye.
Thanks to everyone. The comments in the chat were great today, so thank you. That's been wonderful.
Brilliant.